Saginor. Recently, I read 5 Days at Memorial about what happened at Memorial Hospital in New Orleans during and after Hurricane Katrina in 2005. It's a riveting and horrifying book. The last chapter deals with what hospitals and nursing homes are doing to prepare for disasters in the wake of Katrina. Unfortunately, not all hospitals in New York and New Jersey were prepared well enough for Hurricane Sandy in 2012. We are all aware of the storm surge that flooded the subways and cut off power so that elderly or infirm occupants of high-rise buildings were stranded for about 2 weeks. The water entered NYU Langone and Bellevue hospitals so fast and with such force, the doors of the elevators burst open. Most of the emergency generators were in the basement of the hospitals. I found it hard to imagine the force of the water until I saw the seismograph recordings from the lab here at Keystone. There are two of the seismographs. One is under normal circumstances and has a sprinkling of red and black dots. And the other, taken during the storm surge, is covered with mostly red. The force of the water caused earth tremors recorded here at Keystone more than 100 miles from New York. After Ian posted the seismographs on his blog, he was interviewed by yahoo.news. And if you go on his blog, you can see these seismographs. They're startling. Our speaker tonight is Assistant Professor of Geosciences here at Keystone. His specialty is volcanology. Besides teaching, he runs the seismic lab here and has done research on volcanoes in Costa Rica and currently in Lesser Antilles. Next year, he will publish the results of this research. His students are fortunate to participate in these research projects. Ian is also involved with the 3D printer here at Keystone. He is designing models of volcanoes to teach Costa Ricans about the hazards of living near active volcanoes. Ian's students learn how not only to run the 3D printer, but to design the software which will tell the printer what to print. Ian gave me a short course on 3D printing 101. When I commented that calling the device a printer seemed a misnomer, he explained the machine, rather than printing symbols with ink on paper, prints a very thin layer of plastic and goes back and forth over that, building up to the designated thickness. He told me that 3D printers are affordable by individuals and by businesses. They are ideal for making prototypes because the designs can be tweaked to perfection before sending them off to the manufacturer to be mass produced. Ian's breadth of experience and knowledge make him well equipped to share with us his views on converging worlds at the intersection of volcanoes and culture. Please welcome Ian Saginor.
Thank you very much, Mary, for that introduction. If you could, come back maybe at the beginning of the year and just do that the beginning of all my classes, and maybe any room I ever walk into, if you could just sort of do that would be great. great. I'm going to do this without the microphone. I don't think that's going to be a problem, but you just let me know if it is. All right, everyone's a critic. Kurt, can we kill some of these lights up front? I don't know if that's if you're having trouble seeing that. If it looks fine to you, then it's okay with me. Anyway, so I am here to talk about volcanoes. This image right here is taken from the space station. This is Saginor on the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. And this is a really spectacular image right here showing a massive eruption. And as the this is also not working. Is that okay? This is not working. Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about this one. Okay. So this is Saginor right here on the Kamchatka Peninsula. You can see right here that there is this big sort of like cotton ball looking thing at the top. And what that is actually is water vapor. And as the plume rises, it cools off, and it actually, some of that water condenses, and it forms that cloud right there. I don't know that I've ever seen anything quite like that. It's a really spectacular image, and like I said, they even have video of that happening from the space station. So they have a couple other images of this. I know it looks to you like the volcano has sort of blasted a hole in the clouds right there, but that's actually not what's happened. It's just because this is an island, and the clouds weren't forming directly above it because the evaporation was coming from the ocean. Kurt, do we have a...
Yeah, still I get my
sidekick there. I'll have to just
move it forward. Okay, that's fine. So the theme for this gathering is on edge, and I gave a lot of thought to what that meant to me and how I wanted to approach it. So I suppose the most easy way to think about it as a geologist is like this. You know, as a geologist, we spend a lot of time thinking about the edges of things. Okay, what happens on the edges? In this case, we're talking about tectonic plates. So the surface of the Earth is covered by different plates that move relative to each other, and this is what you can see right there. Kurt, can you go more? If we zoom in just a little bit, you can see a series of subduction zones. This is what's known as an active margin. You can see that this is the Pacific plate subducting. To the right is the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. To the left, you have Japan. In the middle, that's the Kamchatka Peninsula. So that's what's known as an active margin. And obviously, there's a lot of things going on there that we can talk about. If we switch to a different ocean, we're now over in the Atlantic. What you see here is the mid-ocean ridge, which is this sort of sinuous mountain range that you see running down the middle of it. And what that is it's also known as a spreading center. So that's a place where the two continents were once joined, in this case South America and Africa, and actually also North America as well. And they spread apart. Oh, thank you. Yep. Okay. So you can see it running right down there. That's what's known as a passive margin, although there is a lot of interesting things happening there as well. So obviously, interesting things happen on the edges of these continents. So what sort of things happen there? Okay, what you're looking at are two maps. One, the top one, is a map of earthquakes. Those are the largest earthquakes in the world plotted on the map. Down below, what you're looking at are active volcanoes. Okay, so can anybody just look at that, and do the two look a little similar? They're basically the same. And not only are they the same, but both volcanoes and earthquakes tend to cluster on the edges of these plates. So as a geologist, in particular a volcanologist, somebody who studies volcanoes, the edges of these plates are where a lot of the action is. And you can see that right here. And if you zoom in just a little more, you see a little more complexity. So I said that earthquakes and volcanoes are associated with the edges of these continents, but it's actually a little more complicated than that. Here, what you're looking at is in South America. You have the Pacific plate, which is subducting underneath the Pacific plate underneath the South American plate. And what you see is a line of volcanoes and a line of earthquakes. This right here is the subduction zone. That is the spot at which the two plates meet. And you'll note that neither the earthquakes nor the volcanoes are on that line. They both run parallel, but in this case towards the east. So the earthquakes tend to cluster here, the volcanoes tend to cluster here, but both tend to cluster right along the edges of this continent. So the reason that the volcanoes and the the earthquakes don't line up perfectly is a little complex, and if you are interested in that, you just have to take my Earthquakes and Volcanoes class, which is usually filled, but I'll make an exception, or you can just talk to me afterwards, I can explain it. But that's the easy way to go. I mean, obviously, as a geologist, I could just sit here and talk about geology, which is by nature what happens at the intersection between these margins. Okay, but we can do this a slightly different way. Another way of thinking about this is we can talk about the ways in which the natural world intersect human culture and and art and literature and poetry, and that's what I want to talk about today. Obviously, we know that volcanoes affect people. I mean, when there's a massive volcanic eruption, we know that the people right there are affected. We know that. But I don't even want to talk about that because there are more subtle ways that volcanoes affect people. So we know that if you live right next to a volcano and there's a gigantic eruption, it will affect you. I mean, that doesn't really require a whole lot of extra explanation. But we want to talk about the more subtle ways. And the first thing we want to do is talk about the ways that volcanoes have been depicted in art and literature and also poetry. So that's what we're going to do for a little while, and then we'll come full circle. This right here is what is generally believed to be the world's oldest depiction of a volcano. I know you can't see that particularly well, but what we're looking at is this spot right here, these sort of two mounds above the civilization here. This is likely Mount Hasan, and this was found in the Turkish settlement of Catalhoyuk, and this is 9,000 years old. Okay, 9,000 years old, and this right here is a reconstruction of that mural. This was a mural found on the inside of a room. And this is just a reconstruction, and you can see that it looks like they had drawn something coming out of it, and perhaps even a cloud. This is Mount Hasan, and this is just a few kilometers away from where this mural was found. And what I did was I just cut out that picture and made it transparent so you could see that it does, in fact, match up. It's not 100%, but that's very likely what this was a painting of. And because there's something coming out of the top, it's basically a warning. And by the way, Mount Hasan erupted approximately 9,000 years ago. So this is very likely a record of that eruption. And it's actually a little better than it looks. This little part right here looks like it doesn't match the drawing, but that is probably more recent. That's a more recent lava dome that formed after this thing was drawn. This right here is a painting that was found in the House of the Centenary in Pompeii. Okay? It's by an unknown painter prior to 79 AD. So if this is Pompeii, then what is that right there? Right, that's Vesuvius. The snake is a real Vesuvius fan. Well, you're going to like this. We got more for you. Anyway, so the snake here represents the household gods, and this guy over here dressed up in the grape outfit, who's he? Bacchus, right? Yeah, Bacchus, Dionysus to the Greeks, the Roman god of merriment and revelry. And I think, I'm pretty sure that what you're looking at here are grapes that are being grown on the side of Vesuvius. Volcanoes, by the way, make for really, really good soil. This right here is from Olaus Magnus's Carta Marina, painted in 1539. It's one of the earliest and most accurate maps of northern and northwestern Europe ever made. Okay, this is just a small portion of it, and what you're looking at is Iceland. It's, like I said, it was one of the most accurate ones of the day. So we are ignoring the giant sea monsters. But other than that, it was very accurate, or at least fairly accurate. And what you're looking at here, if we just zoom in a little bit, are volcanoes. Okay, and you can see the lava coming out. But the other interesting thing about this particular painting is what's going on right here. This is actually pretty insightful because, yes, there is a volcano there, but what this actually is the rift zone on the Reykjanes Peninsula. So Iceland is being torn in two, and lava is able to make its way to the surface. But it tends to come out in Iceland along these ridges, along these cracks. And that's what's being depicted here. This is a painting also of Mount Vesuvius, which, like I said, is going to keep coming up over and over, not just because Mount Vesuvius has been active many, many, many times over the last several thousand years, but because, of course, Italy was a huge center of classical art. So you're going to see a lot of this. This is a painting by Peter Bruegel in 1558. This is obviously reproduced on a stamp. But here's another one, Filippo di Angeli, 1631 eruption, which was a massive, massive eruption. You can see it off in the distance there with a large plume rising upwards. Another one, Didier-Barra, also the 1631 eruption. Note that all of those were painted from across the Bay of Naples, which seems to be the safe spot to be standing. You would not want to be painting this while standing right here. Vesuvius is an extremely dangerous volcano and has erupted many times since its most famous eruption in 79 AD, in which it buried the cities of Pompeii and also Herculaneum, which nobody ever talks about. So. Poor people of Herculaneum. This is a spectacular painting with a really interesting story behind it. This is Salvator Rosa, The Death of Empedocles, painted in 1666. Now, Empedocles was a pre-Socratic Greek philosopher, and he's best known for the Greek conception of the four elements that make up the earth. Okay, that's going to be earth, wind, fire, and water. Okay, that was his main contribution. But as legend has it, he also killed himself by throwing himself into the active crater of Mount Etna. And the purpose was to convince his students that he had risen upwards and become a god. And there were a number of literary treatments that were given to this. Some describe him throwing himself in and the volcano spitting out his sandal. So that sort of ruined, and you know, the idea was that sort of ruined the illusion. So he went to all this trouble, but it spat out a sandal, so nobody bought it. But you know, I don't know if that's really true, but anyway, it's interesting. In the history of Western philosophy, an unnamed poet was quoted as saying this: "Great Empedocles, that ardent soul, leapt into Etna and was roasted whole." That was meant to be funny, but so this is another one, also by Salvator Rosa, called the Studies for the Death of Empedocles. So this was showing, he wasn't quite sure, I guess, exactly where he wanted this figure to be in the painting. So he did sort of a number of drawings showing different segments of this. It gives it a nice sort of action feel, even though this is obviously an unfinished painting. This is also Mount Vesuvius, one of my favorite paintings, Joseph Turner, 1817. Once again, painted from across the Bay of Naples, which if you're ever in Naples during a volcanic eruption, you know, this side would be best. But another one of my favorites, Cotopaxi in Ecuador, painted by Frederick Church in 1862. Pay attention to the sunset, okay? Because that sunset is going to become very important for us later in this talk. So just keep that in mind. Also Mount Vesuvius, which erupted violently in 1872. These are people attacking the statue of Saint Gennaro, who was the patron saint of Naples. And I guess what they are saying is they feel let down. As the volcano is erupting. This appeared in Harper's Weekly that year, in 1872. Another fascinating story, the story of Priquitin in Mexico. Priquitin, well, put it this way. 1 year before this was painted, what you would have seen was